You know, life has this uncanny way of showing you just how far you've come, only to hit you with a reality check that throws everything into question. For me, Alara, that reality check came in the form of a baby, a wicker basket, and a chillingly familiar note on my doorstep, just when I thought I'd finally found my peace after a divorce that felt like a war. My past and my ex-husband decided to crash back into my life in the most shocking way imaginable. If you've ever fought tooth and nail to reclaim your life after a toxic relationship, only to have that hard-won peace threatened by an act of unbelievable audacity, then you might just get what I'm talking about, because trust me, you won't believe what happened next. So, grab a drink, get comfortable, because this is my story, the one where I woke up to a screaming baby, a note that read "Your turn," and decided it was time to call the news. If you've ever had to deal with an ex who just wouldn't let go, or faced a situation that felt utterly, unfairly, your responsibility, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. My life, before that morning, was a carefully constructed haven of calm. 2 years prior, I had finally escaped a turbulent, emotionally draining marriage to Mark. Our divorce had been brutal, messy, and left me with a deep, lingering mistrust of a lot of things. Mark was charming, charismatic, and incredibly persuasive on the surface. He was a successful marketing executive, always impeccably dressed, smooth-talking his way through life. But beneath that polished exterior lay a deep vein of irresponsibility, a pathological need to avoid consequences, and a talent for emotional manipulation that bordered on gaslighting. Our marriage had been a slow unraveling. He'd make grand promises he never kept. He'd rack up credit card debt in my name, then claim it was for our future. He'd disappear for days on business trips, only to return with vague explanations and a lingering scent of cheap perfume. He was chronically unfaithful, a fact I discovered through a series of painful, undeniable revelations each time. He'd blame me for driving him away or gaslight me into believing I was too sensitive. The divorce, though painful, was my liberation. I walked away with little more than my self-respect, my career as a freelance graphic designer, and a deep-seated resolve to never let anyone dictate my worth again. We had no children together, thank God, which made the split cleaner, or so I thought, after the papers were signed. I cut all ties, blocked his number, unfriended him on social media, changed my routines. I needed to heal, to rebuild my life from scratch, and I did. My new life was quiet, fulfilling. I lived in a charming, slightly eccentric bungalow on the outskirts of the city, a place I had poured my heart into decorating. My work as a graphic designer allowed me flexibility and creative freedom, and I was finally building a stable, independent financial future for myself. I had reconnected with old friends, found solace in my hobbies, and even started tentatively dipping my toes back into dating. Albeit with a healthy dose of caution, I was happy, genuinely happy. Then came that Tuesday morning. The air was cool, the sky a clear, crisp blue. I was in my kitchen, brewing my first cup of coffee, looking forward to a day of creative work. My house was quiet, peaceful. My dog, a sleepy golden retriever named Sunny, was curled up by the back door. Suddenly, a sound, a sharp, piercing wail that cut through the morning silence. It sounded like a baby. My brow furrowed. That was impossible. I live in a quiet neighborhood. No young children next door. The wail came again, louder this time, tinged with a desperate sob. It seemed to be coming from my front porch. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't right. My heart started to pound. I grabbed Sunny's leash, my old habit of checking the porch before opening the door kicking in, a lingering effect of my hypervigilance during the last chaotic months with Mark. I peered through the peephole. On my quaint, sun-drenched porch, nestled right in front of my meticulously painted front door, was a wicker Moses basket, and inside it, swaddled tightly, was a tiny, red-faced baby, its mouth open in a desperate, heartbreaking cry. My blood ran cold. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. A baby. On my doorstep, this wasn't a movie. This wasn't real. I unlatched the door, my hand trembling, and cautiously stepped outside. The baby's cries intensified. A raw, innocent sound that tore at my heart. It was tiny, impossibly small. Wrapped in a blue blanket, its tiny fists flailing. My gaze darted around the porch. There was no car, no person, no sign of anyone else. Just the baby and a small, folded piece of paper tucked under the edge of the blanket. My hands shook as I reached for the note. It was a standard piece of printer paper, folded once. My mind screamed, "This is a joke, a terrible, cruel prank." I unfolded it. The words, scrawled in hurried, frantic handwriting, stared back at me. "Your turn." My breath hitched. The words, blunt and chilling, seemed to echo the baby's cries. And then, my eyes fixated on the handwriting, the distinct slant of the Y, the way the U looped, the sharp, almost aggressive angle of the T. There was no mistaking it. It was Mark's handwriting, undeniably. The initial shock of finding a baby on my porch was immediately overshadowed by a wave of disbelief. Then a searing, white-hot fury. Mark, my ex-husband, the man who had walked out on every responsibility, who had gaslighted me, cheated on me, and then disappeared from my life. He had left his new baby on my doorstep, with a note that effectively said, "I'm done. You deal with it." My stomach churned. This wasn't just irresponsible. It was a heinous act of abandonment. And it was aimed directly at me, a calculated, cruel move to once again dump his problems into my lap, to disrupt the peace I had fought so hard to build. He wasn't just abandoning a child. He was abandoning a child with me, a bitter, twisted form of revenge or manipulation. The baby's cries grew weaker, softer, more desperate. My instincts, the human instinct to protect a helpless creature, overrode my shock and anger. This wasn't just Mark's problem. It was a vulnerable, innocent life. I gently, carefully, lifted the Moses basket, my hands surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my soul. The baby was warm, impossibly soft, its tiny face crumpled in distress. I brought the basket inside, closing and locking the door behind me, feeling as if I had just stepped into a nightmare. Sunny, my golden retriever, whined softly, nudging the basket with her nose, as if sensing the distress. I carried the baby into the living room, placed the basket on the coffee table, and gently unswaddled the infant. It was a girl, impossibly tiny, probably only a few weeks old. Her little eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down her red cheeks. My heart ached for her. This innocent life caught in a storm of adult irresponsibility. I checked her over instinctively. She seemed healthy, if distressed. There was a small, crudely packed diaper bag tucked into the basket, containing a few diapers, a tiny bottle, and a can of formula. No clothes. No blankets beyond the one she was swaddled in. No identifying documents. Just a baby, a note, and the devastating implication. I had so many questions. Who was her mother? Had she abandoned the baby too? Was she even alive? My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. Mark, the perpetual escape artist, the master of avoiding consequences. This was just another, far more egregious example of his pattern. My initial reaction of pure, unadulterated fury began to mix with a profound sense of helplessness. What was I supposed to do? I had no children. I knew nothing about babies. I had just rebuilt my life, my independence, and now, this utterly unfair, unbelievable burden. I called Jessica, my best friend. She's a no-nonsense, incredibly practical woman, and a lawyer by profession. She was the one who had guided me through the darkest days of my divorce. "Jessica," I choked out, my voice trembling. "You are not going to believe this. Mark just left a baby on my doorstep." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, "He what?" I quickly recounted everything: the wailing, the Moses basket, the note, Mark's handwriting. I could hear Jessica's furious gasps punctuating my story. "Alara," she said, her voice tight with rage, "that's illegal. That's abandonment. That's kidnapping. Practically, you need to call the police. Immediately." "The police?" I whispered, looking at the tiny baby. "But what about the baby? I can't just hand her over to strangers. And what if it makes things worse for her? Right now, your priority is the baby's safety and well-being. And then your own protection," Jessica stated. her lawyer brain kicking in. You're not her parent, you have no legal right to her, and Mark has committed a serious crime. We need to document everything. Take photos of the baby, the basket, the note, every single detail. And then, you call the police and Child Protective Services. This is not your responsibility to fix. Alara, this is Mark's mess, and he needs to face the consequences. Her words were firm, pragmatic, and desperately needed. I couldn't let my anger or my misplaced sense of responsibility cloud my judgment. This was bigger than me. This was about an innocent child, and it was about finally making Mark, the ultimate responsibility avoider, face the music. I hung up, feeling a cold resolve settle in my gut. The baby's cries had finally softened into whimpers as I gently rocked her basket. My heart ached with pity for this helpless creature, dumped so callously by a man who refused to be a father. But the pity was quickly replaced by a fierce, righteous anger. Mark thought he could just discard his responsibilities, leave them on my doorstep with a smug, "Your turn." He thought he could ruin my peace, drag me back into his chaos. He thought I would quietly handle it, just like I had handled all his other messes in our marriage. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. He was about to face consequences not just from me, but from the entire world. I had fought tooth and nail for my freedom and my independence, and I wasn't about to let his latest act of cruelty go unchallenged. He thought he could get away with it. He thought I would be silent. He had picked the wrong woman to dump his problems on. I wasn't just calling the police. I was calling the news. It was time for his chickens to come home to roost, very publicly. The tiny, fragile presence of the baby in the wicker basket brought a wave of overwhelming emotion. My initial shock and fury at Mark's audacity gave way to a profound sense of responsibility for this innocent life. Her cries, though now softer whimpers, tugged at something deep within me. My meticulously rebuilt world, my hard-won peace, had been shattered, but in the wreckage, a new, unexpected clarity emerged. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about a child. I carefully picked up the baby, cradling her awkwardly in my arms. She was so small, so utterly helpless. Her eyes, a startling shade of blue, fluttered open, blinking slowly at the unfamiliar face. A tiny hand reached out, instinctively grasping my finger. In that moment, the anger at Mark, while still simmering, took a back seat to the primal urge to protect. If you've ever felt an immediate, overwhelming connection to a vulnerable being, a sense of fierce protectiveness that overrides all personal grievance, you know this feeling. I gently rocked her, whispering soft, nonsensical reassurances. Sunny, my golden retriever, nudged my leg, then cautiously sniffed the baby's blanket, a low, comforting whine rumbling in her chest. It was a bizarre, surreal scene me, a woman who had sworn off commitment after a devastating divorce, holding a newborn abandoned by her irresponsible ex-husband. My lawyer's voice, Jessica's, echoed in my mind. Your priority is the baby's safety and well-being, and then your own protection. She was right. I needed to document everything. I carefully placed the baby back in the basket, then grabbed my phone. I took multiple photos of the baby in the basket. The crude note, the note next to the baby, the diaper bag, every detail, every angle, evidence. Then, I focused on the baby. She needed immediate care. I warmed the bottle of formula from the flimsy diaper bag, awkwardly trying to figure out how to feed her. My hands, usually so steady holding a design stylus, fumbled with the tiny bottle. The baby latched on, greedily, her small mouth working efficiently. She was clearly hungry. As she fed, a tiny tremor went through her. Then she settled, her eyes closing, the whimpers subsiding into soft, contented sighs. Watching her, a profound sadness washed over me. This innocent life, abandoned so callously. It wasn't fair, and it brought back a flood of memories from my marriage to Mark. Memories I had painstakingly tried to bury. Mark, my ex-husband, he was, and always had been, a master of avoiding consequences. Our marriage was a string of his broken promises, his grand schemes that crumbled, and his uncanny ability to shift blame. He was a chameleon, charming and persuasive to the outside world, but manipulative and utterly selfish behind closed doors. I remember when we first met. He was everything I thought I wanted: charismatic, ambitious, seemingly devoted. He swept me off my feet with grand gestures and eloquent promises of a shared future. I was a young, naive graphic designer, drawn to his confidence and zest for life. He always talked about our future, our dreams, making me feel like an equal partner. But that illusion quickly faded. Early in our marriage, he'd insist on handling all our finances, claiming he was better with money, I trusting and busy with my budding freelance career. Let him, but slowly, imperceptibly. Our joint savings dwindled, while he seemed to acquire new, expensive toys, a faster car, designer watches, lavish business trips that I wasn't allowed to inquire about. When I questioned him, he'd gaslight me. "Sarah, you're being paranoid. It's for our investments. You just don't understand high finance." Or, "Why are you always so suspicious? Don't you trust me?" He made me feel guilty for simply asking about our money. The infidelity, when it finally came to light, was devastating, not once, not twice, but a pattern of casual betrayals. Each time I confronted him, he'd flip the script. "You're never home, Alara. You're always working. What do you expect me to do?" He'd make me believe it was my fault, my distance. That drove him to seek comfort elsewhere. I'd spend weeks questioning myself, my worth, convinced I was the problem. Jessica, my friend, had seen through him even then. "He's a narcissist. Alara," she'd warned. "He'll never take responsibility. Get out now." It took me 2 more years, 2 more cycles of his charming apologies and devastating betrayals, to finally break free. The divorce itself was a protracted battle. He fought over every penny, despite my giving him the majority of our shared assets just to get him out of my life. He dragged my name through the mud, spread rumors about my instability, and generally made the process as painful as possible. He lost, eventually, primarily because his lies were easily debunked by financial records and my calm, consistent truth. But the scars of that battle ran deep. I emerged from it with a fierce need for control over my own life, my own finances, my own peace. And now, this baby. A stark, undeniable reminder of his unchanged nature. He had a new life, a new family, and apparently, a new baby. And when that new responsibility became too much, his first instinct was to dump it on someone else, someone he clearly believed was still beholden to him, still his emotional dumping ground. "Your turn." The sheer arrogance of it, the chilling lack of empathy. It was Mark, encapsulated in 2 words and a helpless infant. After the baby finished feeding, I gently burped her, holding her tiny, fragile body against my shoulder. She smelled of new baby, a scent so pure and innocent, completely at odds with the darkness of how she arrived. My heart softened even further. This wasn't Mark's fault anymore. This was a child's suffering. I knew, unequivocally, that I could not keep this baby. I was not equipped, financially or emotionally, for motherhood, especially not under these circumstances. My life was finally stable, but still fragile, and I couldn't allow Mark's irresponsible actions to derail my hard-won peace. But I also couldn't just give her away. She needed protection. She deserved justice. And Mark needed to be held accountable, publicly and unequivocally. I had to contact the authorities. It was the right and only legal path. But I also knew Mark. He would deny everything. He would lie, manipulate, and try to make me out to be the villain. He would try to disappear again, to evade responsibility. I needed more than just the police. I needed leverage, public leverage. I thought about the times Mark had used his charm and influence to escape consequences. The way he had twisted narratives in the divorce. He hated being exposed. He hated being seen as anything less than perfect. And the quickest way to expose someone in our modern world, the news. The idea was audacious, perhaps even a little wild, but it felt right. It felt like the only way to truly cut off his escape routes, to ensure he couldn't simply vanish from this responsibility as he had vanished from so many others. I picked up my phone again, my fingers hovering over the dial pad. First, Child Protective Services CPS, then the police, and then the news. Not some random reporter, but someone I knew, someone who would understand the nuances of this story and handle it with sensitivity and impact. I had a contact, Maria Rodriguez, a seasoned investigative reporter for the local news station. I had worked with her once, years ago, when I did some pro bono graphic design work for a local nonprofit that was trying to expose a corporate scandal. Maria was fierce, ethical, and had a reputation for digging for the truth. She also detested injustice. I held the baby close, her tiny breath soft against my neck. I took a deep, fortifying breath. This was going to be messy. It was going to drag me back into Mark's chaotic world, at least for a while, but it was the only way to truly protect this child, and to finally, definitively, sever the lingering tendrils of Mark's control over my life. He thought he could dump his problems on me with a smug, "Your turn." He was about to learn that my turn meant turning the spotlight on him, for the whole world to see. I laid the baby back in the basket, watching her eyelids flutter. "It's okay, little one," I whispered, a fierce protectiveness swelling in my chest. "You're safe now, and your father, he's about to learn a very hard lesson about responsibility." I picked up my phone and dialed the local CPS hotline. My voice, though a little shaky, was clear and decisive. "Hello, I need to report a child abandonment. My ex-husband just left his new baby on my doorstep." The battle lines were drawn, and this time, I wasn't fighting in the shadows. I was bringing the fight into the light. The immediate aftermath of finding that baby on my doorstep and dialing the Child Protective Services CPS hotline plunged me into a bizarre, emotionally charged limbo. The tiny infant, now sleeping peacefully in her wicker basket on my living room floor, was a constant, stark reminder of Mark's unbelievable act. My bungalow, usually a sanctuary of quiet independence, felt like a crime scene or a nursery, depending on which way my mind spun. If you've ever been caught in a situation that is simultaneously heartbreaking, infuriating, and utterly bewildering, you know this unsettling mix of emotions. The CPS operator was calm and professional. Guiding me through the initial report, I provided all the details: the time, the place, the baby's appearance, and, crucially, the note with Mark's handwriting. They assured me a social worker would be dispatched immediately, along with law enforcement. My mind was racing. I still hadn't called the police separately, nor had I called Maria, the news reporter. I needed to collect my thoughts and make sure the baby was safe first. While waiting, I tried to make the baby comfortable. I found an old, soft blanket in my linen closet, gently tucked it around her, and placed a pillow under her head. Her tiny face, so innocent, made my heart ache. She was completely unaware of the storm her father had unleashed. I boiled water, sterilized the bottle, and prepared more formula. My graphic design work, my peaceful routine, was completely derailed. My life was now dictated by the needs of a helpless newborn. About an hour later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the police or CPS, yet it was Jessica, my best friend. My rock, she burst in, her face a mixture of concern and righteous fury. "Ilara, oh my God! Is she okay?" Jessica rushed to the basket, her lawyer persona momentarily forgotten as she cooed softly at the sleeping infant. "She's so tiny, Mark actually did this. That absolute monster." "He did," I confirmed, my voice flat. The note was in his handwriting, "Your turn." Like I'm just his personal babysitter, his dumping ground for unwanted responsibilities. Jessica looked at the note, which I had carefully placed in a Ziploc bag. Her eyes narrowed. "This is solid evidence. Ilara, we need to document everything for the authorities, and we need to control the narrative. Mark will lie, twist things, make you out to be unstable. He'll try to disappear." "I know," I said, the words heavy. I was thinking. Maria Rodriguez, from the news, the one I did that pro bono work for. She's an investigative reporter. She hates injustice. Jessica's eyes lit up. "Maria, yes. That's brilliant. Ilara, Mark thrives in the shadows. Where he can manipulate, he despises public scrutiny. This could be the perfect way to force his hand, to ensure he faces real consequences. Not just a slap on the wrist. But we have to be careful. We can't let it look like revenge. It has to be about the baby's well-being, about exposing a pattern of abandonment. Our discussion was cut short by another knock on the door. This time, it was official. A uniformed police officer and a CPS social worker stood on my porch. I took a deep breath. This was it. The next few hours were an intense blur of questions, explanations, and documentation. I recounted the morning's events, showing them the baby, the basket, and the infamous note. The social worker, a kind but firm woman named Ms. Chen, listened intently, her gaze lingering on the baby with professional concern. The police officer, Detective Miller, no relation, thankfully, meticulously took notes, his expression grim. Ms. Reyes, Detective Miller said, "This is a clear case of child abandonment. Mr. Hayes will be facing serious charges. Do you know where he might be, Ihar?" "I have no idea," I replied truthfully. "He's a marketing executive, travels a lot. He has a new partner, a woman named Vanessa, and they recently had a baby. This baby," Miss Chen took over, "will need to take the baby into protective custody. Ms. Reyes will ensure she gets immediate medical attention and is placed with a loving foster family. We'll also open an investigation into Mr. Hayes and the baby's mother." My heart ached as they prepared to take the tiny infant, despite the chaos she represented. A strange connection had formed in those few hours. "Will she be okay?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "She will be safe, Ms. Brock Reyes," Ms. Chen reassured me. "That's our priority." As they wheeled the Moses basket out the door, the silence in my bungalow felt heavier than ever, but it was a different kind of silence, a vacuum waiting to be filled. Not with despair, but with purpose. Jessica squeezed my hand. "Okay, Alara," she said, her voice firm. "Now we call Maria. This isn't just a local news story. This is national." I hesitated. "Are you sure, Jess? This is going to expose everything. My divorce, Mark's past, my life." "He exposed you the moment he put that baby on your porch," Jessica countered, her eyes blazing. "He chose this. He chose to make an innocent child a pawn in his sick game, and he chose to dump his responsibility on you. This isn't just about revenge, Alara. This is about justice for that baby. It's about protecting other people from his irresponsibility, and it's about reclaiming your narrative once and for all. He hates public scrutiny more than anything. This is how we truly make him pay attention." Her words resonated. It wasn't about bitterness. It was about preventing future harm. It was about taking back control. I picked up my phone and dialed Maria Rodriguez's direct line. "Maria, it's Alara Reyes. I have a story for you, and you're not going to believe it." Maria, true to her reputation, was immediately intrigued. She listened to my condensed, objective account, her questions sharp and focused. I sent her photos of the baby, the basket, and the note. I provided her with Mark's full name, his company, and what I knew about his new partner, Vanessa. I emphasized the abandonment, the baby's vulnerability, and Mark's blatant irresponsibility. "Alara," Maria said, her voice serious, "this is huge. This is abandonment of a minor by a high-profile executive. This is going to blow up. Are you prepared for the media storm?" "I am," I replied, a cold resolve settling in my gut. I want him held accountable, for the baby, and for all the years he got away with everything. Maria's team moved fast, within hours. A camera crew was discreetly parked down the street from my bungalow. Maria herself was there, asking follow-up questions, meticulously verifying every detail. I spoke calmly, articulately, focusing on the facts, on the baby's innocence, and on Mark's shocking act of abandonment. I showed them the note, explained its significance, and recounted the history of Mark's irresponsibility without getting bogged down in emotional details. Jessica stood by my side, a silent, supportive presence. My ex-husband, Mark Hayes, left his newborn baby on my doorstep this morning. I told the camera, my voice steady despite the internal tremor, with a note that said, "Your turn. This innocent child deserves a safe, loving home, and her father needs to be held accountable for his actions." The segment aired that evening. It was concise, impactful, and utterly devastating for Mark. Maria, a master storyteller, framed it perfectly: the innocent baby, the shocking note, the high profile, seemingly respectable executive abandoning his child. It hit every nerve. The media frenzy began almost immediately. My phone, which I had placed on silent, was flooded with notifications. News channels picked up the story, social media exploded, and calls from national news desks started pouring in. The phrase "baby on doorstep" and "executive dad's abandonment" became trending topics. Mark's name, his company's name, were suddenly synonymous with callous irresponsibility. I watched the news segment from my living room, feeling a strange mix of vindication and surreal detachment. This wasn't about revenge in a petty sense. This was about justice, about accountability. Mark had spent his entire life avoiding consequences, charismatic enough to charm his way out of every mess. But you couldn't charm your way out of a baby left on a doorstep. Broadcast on national television, the fallout was immediate and spectacular. His company, a well-known marketing firm, released a terse statement saying they were aware of the deeply concerning allegations and were investigating immediately. That was corporate speak for, "We are terrified of the PR nightmare this is becoming." Then came the calls from Mark's family. His mother, who had always doted on him, called me, hysterical. "Alara, what have you done? Mark says you're lying. He says you're trying to ruin his life. This can't be true." "It is true," I replied, my voice cold. "And I have the baby, the note, and the police report to prove it. Your son abandoned his newborn child on my doorstep." His ex-friends, the ones who had sided with him during our divorce, started texting me, their tone shifting from accusatory to bewildered. "Alara, is this for real? We can't believe Mark would do something like this." The public reaction was overwhelmingly on my side. Strangers sent messages of support, offering help, resources, or simply words of encouragement. The sheer injustice of a father abandoning his baby, compounded by the brazen note and my calm, dignified response, resonated with people far and wide. But the most significant immediate consequence was the direct pressure on Mark. He had been effectively cornered. There was nowhere for him to run. No lies he could tell that would hold up against the weight of a national news story and a police investigation. His carefully constructed life of charm and irresponsibility was unraveling in real time, for the entire world to see. He thought he could dump his problems on me. He never expected me to turn his problems into a global headline. The public reaction was immediate and ferocious. The story of the baby on the doorstep and the executive dad's abandonment wasn't just a local news item anymore, it had gone viral. Social media was ablaze. Mark's name, once associated with glossy marketing campaigns, was now trending alongside terms like deadbeat dad and irresponsible. His company's social media pages were being flooded with angry comments, demanding action. If you've ever seen the full, unbridled fury of the internet unleashed on someone, you know it's a force more powerful than any legal team. I, Alara, watched it all from a place of quiet detachment. The initial shock had given way to a steely resolve. And now, as the story gained traction, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't about me anymore. Not entirely. It was about exposing a pattern of behavior that needed to be brought to light. It was about holding someone accountable who had always found a way to escape consequences. My phone, despite being on silent, constantly vibrated with messages and calls. Most were from news outlets, desperately seeking an exclusive interview. Others were from strangers, offering words of support, sending well wishes for the baby, or simply expressing their outrage at Mark's actions. There were even a few from distant acquaintances. Reaching out in disbelief, I ignored most of them, focusing on the advice Jessica and Maria had given me: stick to the facts, protect the baby, and control the narrative. Jessica, my lawyer friend, was a whirlwind of activity. She was fielding calls from various agencies, ensuring that the baby's case was being handled properly by Child Protective Services CPS, and that the police investigation into Mark was moving forward. "Alara," she said during one of our calls, her voice tight with a mixture of exhaustion and grim satisfaction. "CPS has officially located the baby's mother, a woman named Vanessa. She's been in and out of the hospital for postpartum complications. She claims she had no idea Mark was going to do this. He told her he was taking the baby to stay with his sister. She's just as shocked as you are, and furious. This added another layer of tragedy to the situation. Mark hadn't just abandoned his child. He had lied to the mother, too. Exploiting her vulnerability, it painted an even darker picture of his manipulative nature. Jessica confirmed that Vanessa was cooperating fully with CPS and the police, providing further damning evidence against Mark. This was no longer just my word against his. The pressure on Mark escalated dramatically. His company, a global marketing firm that prided itself on its public image, was in a full-blown crisis. Their stock took a hit. Their clients began to express concerns, and their carefully crafted brand reputation was crumbling. A public relations nightmare of this magnitude, involving a newborn and an alleged abandonment, was catastrophic for a marketing executive. He finally reached out to me, bypassing the lawyers, ignoring my request to communicate through official channels. His calls were a desperate mix of anger, denial, and pathetic attempts at manipulation. "Alara, what the hell have you done?" he screamed in one voicemail, his voice hoarse with fury. "You're trying to ruin my life. This is slander. This is revenge. I'll sue you for defamation." In another, he tried to play the victim. "Please, Alara, think of my career, my reputation. This is hurting me. You know I'm a good father. This is all a misunderstanding. Just tell the news. It was a mistake." I didn't answer his calls. I simply forwarded the voicemails to Jessica. She smiled grimly. "This is perfect. Alara." More evidence of his state of mind and his continued attempts to evade responsibility. Keep ignoring him. The media, sensing the escalating drama, converged on Mark. Reporters camped outside his office building, his apartment, even his parents' home. He was hounded, unable to escape the relentless glare of public scrutiny he so despised. He tried to issue a statement through his publicist, a pathetic attempt at damage control that only fueled the outrage, claiming personal family matters and misleading reports. But the image of the baby on my doorstep, the chilling note, and my calm, consistent testimony spoke louder than any carefully worded denial. His family, once so quick to enable him, was now caught in the crossfire. His mother, who had always protected him, called me, hysterical. "Alara, please." Mark is beside himself. "Can't you just make this go away for the sake of the family name?" "For the sake of the family name," I retorted, my voice sharp. "What about for the sake of an innocent baby, abandoned on my doorstep? What about for the sake of the family he built with Vanessa, which he's now abandoning? This is his mess, not mine, and not the baby's, and he needs to take responsibility." She quickly hung up. His inner circle, the friends and colleagues who had enabled his charm and ignored his irresponsibility, began to distance themselves. His carefully curated network crumbled as quickly as his public image. He was utterly, devastatingly isolated. The police investigation was progressing rapidly, with my testimony, the note, and Vanessa's cooperation. They had more than enough evidence. They formally charged Mark with child abandonment and reckless endangerment. The news of his arrest hit the headlines, a final, undeniable blow to his public image. Maria Rodriguez, the investigative reporter, called me personally. "Alara, thank you. This story needed to be told. You were incredibly brave. We've received an outpouring of support for you and the baby. People are genuinely moved by your compassion and your courage." Her words were powerful. It wasn't just about Mark's downfall. It was about the positive impact of my decision. It was about advocating for a helpless child, about exposing injustice, and about showing the world that responsibility matters. As the legal wheels began to turn, CPS provided me with updates on the baby. She had been named Lily by the social worker, a beautiful, fragile name. She was healthy, thriving in temporary foster care, and would soon be placed with a long-term foster family while her case, and Mark's, proceeded through the courts, knowing she was safe, knowing she was cared for, brought an immense sense of relief. My primary motivation for this public exposure had been fulfilled. The immediate storm around me began to subside as the focus shifted to Mark's legal proceedings. My phone rang less often. The news crews dispersed. My bungalow slowly returned to its state of quiet peace, albeit a peace tinged with the memory of Lily's cries and the chilling presence of Mark's note. My design work, which had been put on hold, now became a source of solace and a way to channel my emotions. I poured myself into my creative projects, finding a renewed sense of purpose. My clients were understanding, and many expressed their admiration for my courage. I also began to reflect on my journey. For years, I had allowed Mark's manipulations to define my self-worth. I had constantly questioned myself, doubted my instincts, and felt responsible for his irresponsibility. The divorce had been the first step in reclaiming my agency. The baby on my doorstep, and the note, had been the ultimate test. And by choosing public exposure, by choosing accountability over silence, I had finally, definitively, broken free from his lingering control. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about boundaries. It was about the profound power of standing up for yourself, not just against a personal slight, but against a fundamental injustice. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to be a victim. Mark was facing the consequences he had so desperately tried to avoid his entire life. His career was in tatters, his reputation destroyed, his personal life in shambles. He had nowhere left to run. The court proceedings would likely be long and arduous, but he would not escape accountability, and the baby, Lily, would have a chance at a loving, stable future, far away from her irresponsible father. My life, once defined by the aftermath of a toxic marriage, was now defined by my courage, my compassion, and my unwavering commitment to justice. The tiny, abandoned infant had, in a strange and profound way, given me an unexpected gift, the opportunity to fully reclaim my power, to find my voice, and to stand as a beacon of truth against manipulation. The most difficult chapter of my life had, surprisingly, become the most empowering, and I was finally, truly, ready for a new beginning. The initial media frenzy surrounding Mark's abandonment of baby Lily eventually subsided, much like a tropical storm moving out to sea. The headlines moved on, but the legal and personal fallout for Mark was just beginning. For me, Alara, the weeks that followed were a testament to my newfound strength and the unwavering support of those who truly cared about me. If you've ever gone through a period of intense crisis, where every day feels like a battle, and then found yourself standing firm, you understand the quiet power of resilience. Mark, now officially charged with child abandonment and reckless endangerment, vanished from his corporate life. His company, reeling from the public relations disaster, had swiftly terminated him. The once charming marketing executive who skillfully manipulated public perception was now a pariah, hounded by the media he once courted. He resurfaced only briefly, through his lawyer, issuing vague, indignant denials that held no weight against the mountains of evidence. His desperation, however, didn't stop him from trying to retaliate against me. He couldn't physically approach me due to a restraining order quickly secured by Jessica, but he tried every other manipulative tactic in his arsenal. My phone, once buzzing with concerned inquiries from strangers, now periodically received anonymous, hateful messages. "You ruined his life, you witch!" He was just stressed. "How dare you expose him like that? You're a cold-hearted b***." He should have left the baby with someone who actually cares. These were clearly from his dwindling circle of enablers, or perhaps even his own family, still clinging to his manufactured innocence. I simply forwarded them to Jessica, adding them to the growing file of harassment. He also tried to spread rumors through his remaining contacts, painting me as a vindictive ex-wife, seeking revenge. He implied I was unstable, fabricating the story for attention, but the visual evidence, the tiny baby, the wicker basket, the chilling note was too powerful. My calm, consistent demeanor in the initial news interviews, contrasting sharply with his frantic denials, had already solidified public opinion. His gaslighting tactics, which had worked so effectively on me for years, crumbled under the weight of objective truth and public scrutiny. The ongoing CPS investigation into Lily's abandonment and the police case against Mark required my continued cooperation. I spent hours giving detailed statements, reliving the shock of that morning, but always focusing on the facts. My priority was ensuring Lily's long-term safety and stability. CPS confirmed that Lily's biological mother, Vanessa, was recovering from her postpartum complications, and was cooperating fully. She was just as much a victim of Mark's deceit and irresponsibility as I was, having been told he was taking Lily to his sister's. This new information further strengthened the case against him, painting a picture of a man who would go to extreme lengths to evade responsibility. Jessica was my rock through all of this. She not only handled all legal communications with Mark's lawyers, shielding me from his attempts to re-engage, but she also provided unwavering emotional support. She was fiercely protective, a true ally who believed in justice. "Alara," she said one afternoon, after a particularly nasty legal letter from Mark's side. "He's throwing everything he has at you: accusations, threats, attempts to dig up dirt on your past. He's desperate. This is the last gasp of a man losing control." "Let him," I replied, a profound sense of calm settling over me. "He can't touch me anymore. His words, his threats, they have no power over me, not after what he did." This was the core of my transformation, the Mark of old. The charming manipulator who could send me into a spiral of self-doubt with a single dismissive comment held no sway over me now. His attempts at gaslighting, once so effective, now seemed pathetic, transparent. I recognized them as desperate bids for control, born of his own fear and inability to face consequences. My boundaries, forged in fire, were unyielding. The legal proceedings against Mark were slow, but relentless. The charges of child abandonment were severe. The district attorney's office was taking the case very seriously. Given the public nature of the abandonment and the clear evidence, Mark, now stripped of his high-paying job and his carefully curated network, was running out of options. His legal team eventually advised him to consider a plea deal, acknowledging the overwhelming evidence. During one of the court dates, where I was required to be present as a witness, I saw Mark in person for the first time since he left Lily on my doorstep. He looked haggard, his usually impeccable suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. The charm was gone. Replaced by a sullen, defeated expression, he saw me, and his eyes, for a brief moment, held a flicker of something I hadn't seen before: fear. He knew he couldn't manipulate me anymore. He knew I was the one who had brought his carefully constructed world crashing down. That brief exchange, unspoken but profoundly understood, was a moment of deep vindication. He had thought he was discarding a problem, leaving it for me to deal with. Instead, I had turned his cruelty into his undoing. CPS continued to provide updates on Lily. She was thriving in a loving foster home, a safe haven far away from her irresponsible father. Vanessa, her mother, was making significant progress in her recovery and was actively working with CPS to ensure Lily's future. There was a chance, a small one, that Vanessa might regain custody once she was fully stable and had a support system in place. Or Lily would be placed for adoption. Knowing that Lily was safe and that Mark was facing accountability brought a profound sense of closure. My life, which had been abruptly interrupted by a shocking act of abandonment, slowly returned to its rhythm, but it was a new, stronger rhythm. My freelance graphic design career flourished. My story, while intense, resonated with many, attracting new clients who admired my courage and resilience. I embraced my work with renewed passion, channeling my experiences into projects that advocated for justice and compassion. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, offering pro bono design work for their outreach materials. Hearing the stories of other women who had escaped controlling or abusive relationships further solidified my resolve and validated my journey. I realized that my personal trauma, transformed into a powerful narrative, could be a source of strength and inspiration for others. My healing journey was ongoing. I continued therapy with Dr. Vance, not to process the immediate trauma of Mark's actions, but to deepen my understanding of healthy boundaries, self-worth, and building truly equitable relationships. I learned to recognize red flags immediately, to trust my intuition, and to prioritize my own well-being above all else. The incident with Lily also brought a new dimension to my understanding of compassion. While Mark's actions were unforgivable, Lily, the innocent victim, became a symbol of resilience and hope. My fight wasn't just for myself, it was for her, and for the principle that children deserve responsible parents. As the legal proceedings against Mark concluded, he eventually accepted a plea deal, resulting in a felony conviction, supervised parole, and mandatory child support payments he would struggle to meet. The final threads of his presence in my life were severed. The "your turn" note, once a symbol of his control, was now a powerful reminder of my triumph, a piece of evidence that propelled me towards a future he could never have imagined. My peaceful bungalow, once a quiet sanctuary, now felt like a fortress of independence. The porch, where Lily's basket had rested, was now just a peaceful entryway to a life I had built on my own terms. The past was behind me, no longer a haunting shadow, but a series of lessons learned, scars healed, and strength gained, a new beginning and redefined purpose. The journey from a heartbroken divorcee to a woman who faced down her ex-husband's most despicable act and emerged stronger was arduous, but ultimately incredibly empowering. My life now is defined not by the trauma of my past, but by the courage I found to reclaim my narrative and stand up for justice. Lily's story eventually faded from the headlines, but her life was irrevocably changed for the better. Vanessa, her mother, after a long and difficult recovery, eventually proved herself capable and committed. With the help of CPS and the significant child support payments now legally enforced for Mark, though consistently fought over, Vanessa gained full custody of Lily. I received updates through CPS, knowing Lily was growing up in a stable environment, loved by her mother, and protected from Mark's irresponsibility. For me, the incident with Lily, while traumatic, became a catalyst for an unexpected purpose. It broadened my perspective, deepening my empathy and commitment to advocacy. My work with the women's shelter expanded, and I started speaking publicly, sharing my story without naming Mark directly, focusing on the themes of resilience and boundaries to inspire others who were trapped in similar situations. My graphic design skills became a powerful tool for social change, allowing me to create impactful campaigns for various nonprofits. I continue to live in my charming bungalow, a testament to my hard-won independence. My professional life is thriving, filled with creative challenges and meaningful work. My personal life is peaceful, surrounded by true friends and a supportive new partner who celebrates my strength and autonomy. I learned that true love isn't about control or manipulation. It's about mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. The journey to establish my boundaries was the hardest battle I ever fought. It was messy, public, and incredibly painful at times, but the peace and empowerment I gained were immeasurable. Mark thought he could dump his responsibility on me and move on. He never expected me to turn his act of abandonment into a powerful platform for accountability and my own profound liberation. If you're out there, struggling with the aftermath of a toxic relationship, or facing an unfair burden, remember my story. Remember that you have the power to draw your own lines, to demand respect, and to fight for justice, not just for yourself, but for others. Your courage, your voice, and your truth are far more powerful than any manipulation. Don't let anyone else define your worth or dictate your turn. Make your own turn. Make it count. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like and subscribe button. Share your own experiences with standing up for yourself and finding your purpose in the comments below. And please, share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their fight for freedom is worth every single step.